What are functions and why they are important? That is what we are going to discuss in this tutorial. Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. My name is Mukesh Kala. I am a 4 times UiPath MVP and a LinkedIn top voice. I have shared my LinkedIn details on the page. Feel free to send me a connection request and I would be happy to be part of your network. In this playlist, we are covering the basics of Python in a step-by-step manner. In the previous videos, we have already seen what is Python, how do you install it, why it is important, how do you do the string manipulation, how do you work with dictionary, and all of these things which you see on the screen. In case you are directly coming to this video and you have no background of Python, I have put the complete playlist link in the description for your reference. Today, we are going to discuss more about functions. So before directly going to today's topic, in case you are coming to the channel and you haven't already subscribed, please consider subscribing to the channel to get the next videos in the Python series. Having said that, let's get started. Okay, so before directly jumping into the functions, I wanted to give you an example that what exactly are these functions. So the people who are coming from a C, C++ or a Java background, you guys might relate to this function, or in other words, the methods in those programming languages. However, for the people who have no idea what exactly is a function, let me try to make you understand with the help of an example. Okay. So for example, today I tell you guys that, hey guys, you have to write a code to check whether let's say a number is odd or even, right? So what you are going to do is you are going to write a program where you have an integer number. You are going to, let's say, take the input and then you are going to divide that integer by 2. If it is divisible by 0, then you say it is even, and if it is, let's say not divided by 2, then you say this is an odd, right? So this would be some of the code which you are going to write in Python to check whether the number is even or odd, right? Now let's say I am writing a very big program, okay, which is a very big program, which is a very huge code, right? Now in this program I have to evaluate this same thing, let's say 10 times. Okay, so 10 times I am going to get a number, right? First I am going to get the n1, during the program I am going to get the n2, and then during the program I am also going to get the n3, right? And during all this time, whenever I get this number, I have to check whether this n1 was even or odd, this n was even or odd, or this one was even or odd, right? Now what I usually do, one way is that whenever I get this number, I write this complete code again here at this position. Again I go here, write this complete code here, again I go here and write this complete code here, right? So every time there is a requirement, I am writing the same code again and again in Python, right? Will this thing work? The answer to that question is yes, it will work, right? But if you ideally realize you are writing the same thing again and again, right? Now one thing which will happen here is, let's say there was some mistake while doing the initial code, right? While you were writing this logic initially, you did some mistake, right? And here you need a change, right? Now whenever you need a change here, that means that you need to do the change here, here and here, right? So same code which is being replicated n number of times in a program, if you do a copy paste, you face this problem. One is you multiply the code, the other is you just actually go and whenever you have to change, you have to change in all the other places, right? Now how does a function solve this problem, right? So what exactly a function will do is, you are just going to write a function, right, in Python, which we are going to see. The input of this function would be a number, and here you would have implementation of the code to check whether the number is odd or even. Now in your program, which is the complete big automation, wherever you get the n1, wherever you get the n2, or wherever you get the n3, I am just going to call this function and instead of this number, right, which you see here, this number, I am going to pass n1. For this one, I am going to call the same function, and now I am going to pass n2. And for this thing, I am again going to pass the function, and I am going to pass n3. Right now, what is the benefit of this approach? The benefit of this approach is, first of all, I am not repeating the code. I am just reusing the same code again and again. And at any point of time I need to update the function, I don't need to update here, here, or here. I can just go here and I can just make changes in this code, right? And it is going to reflect in all the pieces, right? So this is what is called a function, and that is what we are going to see in this tutorial, right? I hope you got the concept of the function clearly. If that is the case, just comment down function and I would understand that yes, we all are in the same page. Okay, so now that you have understand what exactly is a function, let's go by the definition. So functions are the reusable blocks of code designed to perform a specific task, right? Think of them as mini program within your larger program. These are the reusable block of code designed to perform a specific task, right? For example, in our case, the task was to check whether a number is odd or even. What is the benefit? You actually get the modularity, which means that now you can write the codes in module, and you also get a flexibility of reusing the code again and again, right? So this is a bit introduction of what exactly are the functions, right? Now you might be thinking, why exactly is it important, and why as a Python developer I need to learn the function? And the first reason for that is modularity. Whenever we write a program, it is always advisable to write the code in modules, right? If you are coming from a UiPath background, this is the same thing which we do in the RE framework as well, right? Or in any other programming language, we write the code separately into smaller code, so that whenever there is a change, whenever we have to test, we can actually test the individual functionality. Whenever there is a change, the change does not impact the wider program, right? That is why it is recommended to write the code in modules. The second thing is reusability. When you have a code which has to be reused again and again, and you do not want to do the same code duplicate, we use something which is called functions. The third thing is clear structure. Function help us to organize the code into logical section, making it more readable. One part of the programming is that your code should be readable. It should be understandable to all the developers and not only to you. And function provide a very better way of structuring the code. The last one is self-documenting. Well-named function describe what they do, which makes the code easier to understand without extensive comments, right? So these are the something why using the function is important in Python. Okay, so with all these context about functions, now I am back to my VS Code, right? And this is the same solution which we have been working on, right? So if you go to this Explorer, this is all the things which we have been working on. So I'll go here and I will create something which is called functions.py, because it's Python, right? And I hope you guys are also able to follow along these tutorial, right? So as you can see, all of this we have already created, right? So I'll go to the functions, and first thing first, I'll just go here. This is for functions in Python, right? And that is where we are going to write all our code. Okay, once you have created the file, let's quickly see how you define the functions, right? So now functions are defined using the keyword which is called def, right? So keywords are something which are reserved by Python, right? So you have to use a keyword which is called def, right? Functions can take the arguments and return the values. In simple example, argument can be a number, right? As if you want to check a number is even or odd, the argument is a number and the return value is odd or even, right? Functions can have different arguments, which can be positional, keyword, and variable length. We'll talk all of that in a bit moment, but while we work on functions, there are few things which you need to remember. The first thing is that we use the def keyword to define the functions. They can take the arguments, and arguments are different types: positional, keyword, default, and variable length. If you are preparing for a Python interview, this can be one of the interview questions for you, that what are the different kinds of arguments a function can have, right? Now if I talk about the structure, this is how you define the function. You use the def keyword, then you use the function name, and then you actually provide the parameters. That hash function body is a comment where you actually write the implementation, and then you return the value, right? So at a very high level, that is how you define the function. Now when we actually do the practical implementation in Python, then all of this would make more sense, right? So what are the things to take away from here? We need def keyword, we have to use the parameters, we can have a body, and then we can return a value, right? And we have different kinds of argument that we'll discuss as we come along this tutorial. Okay, so I'm back to the functions, and let's start with very simple thing, right? Where let's say today we want to write a program which actually says hello to the user, whichever name the user provide, right? But we are not sure what the name could be. So the first day the name of the user is Mukesh, the second day it is Suresh, the third day it is Ramesh, right? The fourth day it is John, Mary, right? I do not know who is the user. So I want to define a simple function where I will just get the name and it will do its operation, right? Let's try to define that. So first thing first, so I will add a comment again, and you guys can follow along with me so that you better understand, right? Function to greet the user. Okay, first thing first, to define a function we use the keyword which is called def, and then you have to write the function name, right? So I want to call the function name as, let's say, greet, right? I want to greet the user, that's why I call it as greet, right? Now if you remember the syntax, we need to tell the Python, right, what are the inputs that this function is going to have, right? So to greet a user, what do you need? I need the name. So that's why in the bracket I just go and type name, right? This is the name, which means that I am defining a function whose name is greet, and it is expecting the name as an input. Okay, now I'll put a colon. Please remember, this is the syntax. I'll put a colon, right? Now what do you want to do with this name? Once you have the name, I want to say return, right? And I just want to say hello, whatever the name I have provided, right? So what I'm going to do is I will just write the syntax, right? And I'll say hello, and whom do you want to say hello, right? So I want to say hello to the name. Now this name is exactly this name from here, right? So I just want to say hello, whatever the name you have, and then you can just add any message, right? Let's say happy to see you here in channel, right? Let's say this, right? So you can just add any message, but the thing we are not sure is what would be the name, right? So now these two lines have actually created the function for you. You have defined the function, you have provided the input, and then this return means that I want to return this value to the user. Whosoever call this thing, I am going to get this thing, right? Now some of you might be thinking, my Mukesh, why you have written the F here, right? What is this F? I'll explain that. Please hold your questions. I'll explain why I have written the F, right? So this part, whatever you see here, this part is called a defining the function. So this is how you define the function, right? I have just defined the function. Now if I run this program, nothing will happen because nobody has called this program, right? Now let's try to call this program. So I will just write a comment again, call the function, right? Now to call the function, I will just use the function name, which is the greet, and as soon as I put a bracket, it's asking me provide me the name, which is a string, right? Now what is the name? So let's say my name is Mukesh, and that's it, right? So now this guy is going to call the function which we have got here, right? And what do you want to do with this? I just want to print the output as we have seen. So I just write here print statement, and whatever we get from this, I just want to print that, right? So whatever we get from this, I want to print that, right? That's the simple code which we have written. I'll save this and let's try to execute. Okay, and you can see in the output you say that hello Mukesh, happy to see you here in the channel, right? Now for example, if this was the line which you have to write 10 times, right, with 10 different names, what you have to do is you would actually go here, use 10 print statement, and then call it with 10 different names, print this complete statement 10 times, right? And you don't know what is the name, right? However, with this thing I have to just change the name here. Next day, let's say I have the name like Rudra. I just save this and I run this. Now you can see it, hello Rudra, happy to see you here in the channel, right? So this can be something, let's say you are writing an application, or you are writing a program or a app where you want to greet the user. So where you ask the user what is your name, the user says my name is John, right? So now the Python program actually comes and greet the user whatever you have provided in this variable, right? And that way you do not have to write code, right? So that is one example of using a function, right? Now let's talk about what is this f which I have written, right? So this f signifies that the string is an f string, a feature that allow easy and readable string formatting, right? So this f is for formatting, which means that I am telling Python that this is a formatted input which is for string. The f string evaluates the expression inside the curly braces, which is this, and it returns it in the form of a string. So whatever you have written in the curly braces, I want it to be formatted as a string. That's why I have written this f symbol here, right? They offer a concise and efficient way to formatted strings in Python, right? So whenever I have to do some formatting, I can always use this f statement. To better understand this, if I just go here and I remove this f from here, right, from the 7th, I remove this f. Now if I go and run this, you would notice that it is telling me hello name, happy to see you here in the channel. It's not replacing because the input is not formatted, right? So to tell Python that this is a formatted text, I just write an f which stand for formatted strings, run this, and you see it's now working as expected, right? So this was your first function where you have said hello to the user by defining a function, right? I hope you guys were able to follow along, and if that is the case, just comment down maybe greeting functions completed, and I understand that yes, you are able to follow along. Okay, so now let's move forward and try to create some more functions, right? So as I was mentioning that you can have functions with various kind of arguments, right? So as you can see here, this is nothing but an argument where name was the argument, right? Now depending on the kind of functions, you can use this arguments or parameters in different way, and that is what we are going to see next, right? So I'll go here and I will maybe create a new program, and I'll say that let's call it functions, right, underscore arguments, right? And I forgot to put .py, right? So now it's a Python, right? You can see the symbol, right? Now here we can have different kinds of function, and the first one which I'm going to discuss it, function with positional and default arguments, right? So for example, today I want to add two numbers. I can use something which is called def, which is the name, and then I can say here add, right? When I say def add, this simply means that I want to add two numbers, right? Now I have to provide two inputs, one is A and one is B. And what do you want to do with A, B? You just go and say return, and I say A plus B, right? Now every time you use it, I forgot the colon. Now every time you have to add two numbers, you just go and you use this thing. So what you see here, these are nothing, A and B is nothing but a positional argument, right? Now to use it, I can simply go here and I say print, right? What do you want to print? Wherever you have this add function, pass two numbers, let's say 10 comma 20, right? So add two numbers 10 comma 20 and print it. Okay, so let's go here and I'll put the PS small, execute, right? And I am getting the number as 30, right? Because 10 plus 20 is equal to 30, right? Anytime I have any two numbers, I just go here and I make these changes, and that is how easy it is to create the function, right? Same like this, I can create 60 for add, subtract, multiplication, division. You have to just rewrite the logic and you just have to return the function, right? Now I told you something about the different kind of arguments. So this A and B is nothing but the positional, but there come some scenarios where you have to have a default value, where I say that this B which I am passing, I want it always to be 100. You might have some automation or you might have some programs where you say that I always want to have these values like this, right? Where the B is always 100, which means that I have provided a default value. Now when I am calling the add function, I am just going to pass a single value, though it is expecting here 1 and 2 parameters. The second parameter already have a value. Now if I just pass print add 50, you will get 150. The reason for that is B is equal to 100 is our default value which is taken as it is, right? But what happens if I just pass here 50 plus 400? And now let's see what happens. It overrides the value. So you can use it in such scenarios where, let's say, the user do not provide any value, you want to default it to something, and in case the user provide the value, it actually overrides. So this, whatever you see on the screen, is an example of positional and default argument, where you have the default value. Let's say I do not pass the default value, and here also I do not pass the second argument. I am expecting two parameters A and B, and here I am only passing one. And you see that you are getting an error which says that I have nothing for B. So whenever you add, I would like to just say that pass the default value for both of them as 0 maybe, right? Now even if I don't provide anything, I just call the function, it's giving me 0. If I pass only one number, it's going to add 0. But if I provide both the numbers, it's going to get 30. How cool is that? Right? So that's how you can define your business requirement with positional as well as the default argument, and you can do it with the help of mix and match, right? So this is positional, and when you provide the value, that is called the default arguments, okay, which you directly pass here. So that was about the default and the positional type of arguments, right? We also have the keyword and the variable length, that maybe once we go to the advanced topic, then you would understand that yes, we have other different kinds of arguments as well, right? But at this moment it's very beginner, but just for your knowledge, you can have the positional as well as the variable length kind of arguments, which we are going to discuss once we move to the advance of the Python series. Okay, so for now you have understand what is functions, how do you define the functions, how do you pass the arguments, how do you use them, and how do you pass the default value in the arguments. Now whenever you work with the function, there are two things which you guys should always remember, which is the scope and the lifetime, right? Scope are of two types, one is local and one is global. I'll explain with this example, but as of now just keep in mind that we have two kinds of scope, one is local and one is global, as the name suggests. Local is the local, and global is something which is available to the complete automation or the complete program, right? Lifetime of a variable is the duration in which it exists in the memory, right? So whenever we create any variable, whenever we pass any value, the value can be available at two level. One is the local and one is the global, right? The scope defines that where that variable or the value can be accessed, right? So whenever you work with functions, you need to worry and you need to work on what is the scope, right? What do I mean by the scope and the lifetime? Let's see with a real example. Okay, so I'll go here and I will create something which is called function underscore scope dot py. Okay, and here let's try to define something for scope, right? So I will just say that this is for scope and lifetime. So for example, I have a variable whose value is 100. If I define this outside any function, this is nothing but a global variable. Okay, this is a global variable because it's outside any function. Now let's say I create a function, I call it as a def, and I call this as, let's say, let's call it as a function called example, right? It's an example function, and inside that I also have a same variable x whose value is now, let's say, 50, right? This value is inside a function, that is why it is called a local variable. Now if I just go here and if I try to print the value, okay, of x, right? So this I am printing inside, so I will just go here and I write that this is inside the function so that it's easy for us to understand. And I'm saying inside the function x, right? I'm printing the value. Now x here is defined as 100 and here it is defined as 50. Now if I go and I run this file, right, you would see that I am not getting any output because this thing is happening inside this function, and for a function you need to call the function, right? So I will just go here and I'll call this function as whatever you get from whom? From example. Just print it, right? Now if I just go and run this, you see that it says inside the function is 50, right? But what if I just go here and I just print the value of x? I'm not calling this function. Now if I go and if I run this, you would see the value is coming as 100. Now this time it has used the global variable. Okay, so whatever you define inside the function, it is called a local variable, and whatever you define outside the function, it is called a global variable. That is why it is always recommended to have different name. That way you do not fall in this kind of scenarios, right? But the thing which you should remember here is, depending on where the variable is created, it defines the scope. The scope can be global or the scope can be local, right? If it is inside that function, it is here, it is always a local. If it is defined outside, it would be a global, right? So please make sure that whenever you are working with function, you take care of these stuffs as well. Okay, so that was about this thing, right? So now with all these knowledge, right? So for example, when I was giving the example, right, I told you guys that let's try to create a functions for even and odd, right? So now let's say I have to create a function where I have to check whether it is an even or odd, right? So I will just go here and I'll create a new file, right? Let's try to define some let's say cool functions, right? I'll just call this as cool functions, right? Now with all this, see, cool functions, I forgot, I just put rename dot py, right? Now I want to create some cool functions and I want to check whether the number is even or odd, right? So let's try to go here and I'll say check if even, right? So let's check if a number is even, right? So I'll go here, I'll define a function def, I'll say is even, right? I want input as a number, so I'll put num, right? And then inside that I write the implementation, return n, right, and mod 2 equal to 0, right? We just want to define, oh sorry, it's not n, it's the num. I want to check whatever number you have provided, if the number mod 2 will give you the remainder. If the remainder is 0, then it is an odd, otherwise it's an even, right? That's it. So now if you have seen here, this is an expression, so this is going to return you true or false, right? So now whenever you use it, you just pass the number here and it will tell you whether that number is even or not, right? So let's try to test this. I say print, and here I just use the function which is even, right? And let's pass a number which is called, let's say 40, and because it's written num mod 2 is equal to 0, this is going to return whether it is true or it is false, right? So I'll just save this, run this, and let's see what it returns. It returns true, which means that this is even. If I make it to something like, let's say 39, it is false, right? So that's how easy it is to work with these functions, right? Now whenever you talk about functions, you can calculate a lot of things, right? Area of circle, convert into degree, convert into Celsius, right? Print even, print odd, all of that you can do, right? And the good part is you can have more than one arguments here, like this, sorry, not xx, a b c d, right? And whatever you want to do with this, I just want to do here and I want to return that value, and that's how you define a function, right? One more thing, not every time you need to have this thing here. You can write your own logic. Let's say I want to have a function where I want to add the 4 numbers which are provided as input, right? So let's say I want to have a function where I want to calculate all this, so I say sum all and I provide a b c d. Now here you can just write a function, create a variable called sum, and here you can write a plus b plus c plus d, and here instead of returning this, I just say return sum, right? And now this can be one function. Not every time you have to do this, right? So this simply means that you can write a whole lot of code in between and then you can return single value. Now whenever you want to use it, you just say sum all and you just pass the 4 numbers, which is, let's say 1 2 3 and 4, and then always you can pass the default values and all, right? So that's all your implementation, and you can see here the number is 10, 4 plus 3 7 8 9 10, right? So you do not need to have every time this written here. You can write a whole lot of code here, more code, right? And that way comment, right? More code you can write here, and then whatever you want to return, just return it here, right? So that's how you define functions, and that's how you work with functions. Okay, so with all that knowledge, now I want to give you 2 assignments. For one of them, you have the code which is available. You just have to copy paste it from the slides, and the other one you have to do it yourself, right? So the first one is a function where I am using a function which is not the with the name of the function is convert the temperature. I am passing the input as Celsius and I am returning it into Fahrenheit, right? So this is a function which is converting the Celsius to Fahrenheit. This is the formula. So you can see that Celsius into 9 divided by 5 plus 32, which is the default formula. You can convert the temperature from Celsius to Fahrenheit, right? So this you can practice, and this is how you will get the output, right? Now the second assignment is you have to calculate the area of a circle, right? People who are coming from maths, you know that what is an area of a circle. So you have to write a function. The name of the function would be circle underscore area. That takes one argument, because to calculate the circle we need radius. So you would have the radius as the input, and you have to return the area of the circle, right? Now you have to use this formula. Area is equal to pi, whose value is 3.14. So instead of pi, just replace it 3.14 into radius square 2, right? Pi r square, right? If you remember it from your childhood, right? So you have to use this complete information, and you have to write a function to calculate the area of the circle. And this second one you just have to copy paste and create it yourself, right? So these are the two assignments for you guys. Please do complete it, and once you are able to complete, just let me know in the comments that you have successfully completed the assignments, right? So with this, I would like to wrap this video here. Thank you for watching. I hope this was insightful. Any more questions, any more doubts, feel free to write me in the comments, or you can also drop me an email as well, right? Wrapping this video here. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video of the Python automation.